Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish Podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I, of course, am your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish Podcast, Sarah Alapin, and I am also the CEO of Photos from the Harty and District Bliss. We've got our little French bulldog Bud sitting at my feet, keeping him warm as we have a little bit of a stormy day here in the DC area. Before we get started, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, you've got to check it out. It's all about adventure elopement and adventure elopement photography with Brianna Parks. So much fun. And thank you all for tuning into the Wedding Dish today. Let's do it. So today we are talking with a certified life coach who helps step-parents and adults in blended families create more personal happiness. The human behind Amy Says So, Amy Stone, thank you so much for being on the Wedding Dish today.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yay! I am also very excited for this because we're taking a bit of a left turn here on the Wedding Dish because a lot of times we talk about first-time marriages, and that tends to be what we talk about in the industry in general. And in our society, we tend to focus on first babies, you get a baby shower, second baby, you have a sprinkle, or you just skip it altogether. And it's kind of no different in the wedding industry. So, that means that there are often fewer resources for people planning their second or beyond second wedding. And that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about remarriage today, Amy.
Happy to do it. Something I love to talk about.
All right. Well, let's dish. When planning a second marriage where one or both adults have children from previous relationships, where do you start?
Where do you start? So it's a great question because like anything, it depends on who's involved, right? So if you've got two people who both of them have been married before, they may both have experience and they might have preferences and they might be coming to the table with an idea of what they want and what they don't want, right? In my case, I was coming to the table. It was my first wedding and not my husband's first wedding. And this is a scenario where I see often as a step parent that you can feel like you are missing out on some of the firsts. Like, will it be as special to me? Will I get to experience my dream wedding that I've always wanted? Or is it going to be not as important to everybody else? Like, how do I speak up and get my feelings honored? So I think that a good place to start, and we'll see if you agree with this, is trying to figure out what you want. Like, do you have, and not everybody does, right? But do you have childhood dreams of what your wedding will be? Like, what's important to you? And then have the conversation. What's important to the other people? And you're in the industry, so you might see it a lot. I was very surprised at how much other people's dreams of my wedding came into play when I was planning my wedding. That was one of the surprises I had as a bride because I just thought of it as my day, and I was consistently being reminded that other people had their own opinions about what
Oh,
I
yeah.
should be doing.
Oh, yeah. About everything you should be doing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think a lot of people would answer that you start with the kids.
You could start with the kids. I mean, and some of that's going to depend on how old the kids are. Like, so my stepkids were, let me do the math here. They were 8 and 4 when I met them. I think they were 12 and 8 when we got married is the math. They're now both grown. I've been a stepmom for over 20 years. And so so that's why my math skills would be in doubt there. But um they're definitely a factor, but I think that there is, and it's going to be a bigger factor if you've got two groups of kids coming together. And so the blended families come together in all different kinds of ways. And it also is going to matter how old those kids are. The largest group of divorce right now is what we're calling the silver or gray divorce, which are people who are over their 50s. I don't know if that replays into the remarriage percentage, but if you're getting remarried and the kids are like in their 30s or 40s, I don't know that they weigh in very much, like, or not. Like that's a, I mean, they definitely might, but you're not taking on a parent role at that point. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to always start with yourself because once you bring
right.
anybody else into it, you're managing other people and you can easily forget about all of your own stuff.
Oh my gosh. And that is the juggle, right? That is the juggle all through life. Like this is the greatest fake out of adulthood, that you go into this thinking that it's all about you, and then you realize there are all these other people and that it never ends. So, I am one of those people who I so my parents were divorced, and I was really concerned about how that would shake out in my wedding. It turned out to not be a big deal, but we briefly entertained running away and eloping. And my future mother-in-law, like she had her spidey senses on, and she called her son and she was like, listen, if you think you're gonna run away and elope, that is not happening. And we were both like, what? Like, why do you get to vote on this? Like, but she did.
Wow, that is so interesting. Oh my gosh. Smart mother-in-law. That's pretty
Yes.
impressive.
Yeah. I mean, right. Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, talking about kids, how do you talk to kids about the changes in the family dynamic after you've kind of checked in with yourself and talked to your significant other about what your vision is and what's important to you?
So this is a really interesting thing. It's one of the time I spend a lot of time saying, "Hey, what happens in blended families is often the same as what happens in non-blended families." But this is one of the things where the pattern is often reversed. So a lot of time, I mean, I know people live together before they get married as like the norm now, like that's an expected thing. But in a blended family, it's very common that you will do things like buy a house together before you get married. And so the conversation about this relationship has hopefully may have already happened way before the actual wedding. And this is one of the places where it gets out of sequence. But so in my case, and I did not realize, buying a house is actually a much bigger commitment than signing a piece of paper in a lot of ways, right? I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. But so we had already bought a house and we were already living together, and so the conversation of getting married was sort of a secondary thing. It was more about planning a party. So that's the way it happened in my family. The way you have the conversation with kids depends on how old the kids are. Obviously, our kids were young, and so my husband, my future husband, he had the conversation with the kids in terms of introducing me to the kids as like a girlfriend, and they were young enough that in their mind, and my husband knew this, but I didn't. In their mind, I was forever then. In my
Oh.
mind, I was just a girlfriend. In their mind, like, because they were young, they were like, "Oh, this person is here for us forever," because they were little. And little
Oh.
kids, like, they make that assumption, like, "This person is here for me forever." Like, my teacher is always gonna be there for me, so on and so forth. If they're teenagers, it's different, right? Because a teenager is gonna be like, they're gonna question this right away. "Who is this person? What are your intentions?" Make your intentions clear. So, what we did though that I think worked out well, and I didn't come up with this, I'm sure that I read this or did this, is that we did, like, I went to my future stepkids and I asked them if it was okay if I would marry their dad. And we did that after he had proposed and stuff like that. And we worked them into the ceremony. But I wanted them to feel like their preferences were honored. Now, if they had said no, I don't know what I would have done, to tell you the truth. Like I like we were pretty sure that they were going to say yes, but I wanted them to feel included and to be a part, and I gave them little presents and stuff like that.
That's really sweet. That could have gone terribly.
Yeah, I have to ask my husband if he and I talked about it beforehand, like, because I don't have any memory of even considering that they would say no, so
Well, you knew them by that. It's not like it was like
yes.
you met them, and then like 2 weeks later you were like, "Hey, I'm here forever. Is that okay?" When
Right.
after having told them they couldn't go play putt-putt and have ice cream 5 minutes before.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Got it. Okay. So you mentioned that you included the kids in your actual wedding day. How did you incorporate them into the celebration?
So this is really cute and really funny. We doubled up on the role of maid of honor and groomsmen. So like officially, we gave my husband's kids these jobs. Like so, we gave them the jobs, but they were children. So then there were also adults that had backup jobs to support them. So that we doubled up on that. So like my oldest friend was my maid of honor and also my husband's daughter. And so we included them in the ceremony right there like that, and we built it into the vows like the same way we asked them. And so what I didn't realize is so funny, the people who attend, I knew that I had already asked them and they knew that it was going to be a part of this, but it's something that historically, like over the last 20 years, people have mentioned over and over again how much they loved that we built that into the ceremony, the public ceremony, that I looked to them and I said, "Hey, do you take me as your stepmom?" As your dad's wife. So
Oh, that's so sweet. I
yeah,
love that. How and they were 12 and 8?
yeah, I think so. They're 4 years apart, so 12 and 8. Yeah,
Oh my
stepmom. Yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
How
it was very
cute
cute.
is that?
It was very cute.
Oh my god, I love it so much. Well, clearly you created a happy, healthy home throughout this whole process from the start of when you were introduced and through today, because I know you just mentioned that your son or stepson do you call him your stepson or your son?
So I call him. He's my stepson. He's like so. Every blended family is different. My stepkids have a very involved, active mom. She's still alive. She's very much there. So but the interesting thing is, right, that that title stepmom is really like an external term. So like he calls me Amy, and I call him by his name. Right. And so we use that word stepmom like just for other people, like I can still remember the first time like we were in public at an arcade and I was the adult that was nearby. They needed some adult to sign off on whatever goofy thing they needed to do, and we were challenged by whatever teenager was in charge of this, and they were like, well, who's this? And they looked up and they were like, well, this is our stepmom. And we both looked at each other, we all looked at each other like, right, that's who I am, like I can make this decision. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that because every family is different and I certainly don't want to
Every
say the
family
wrong
is
thing.
different. And you can
So,
pick your own name. That's like the other thing that I like, a lot of this when we talk about planning, like a lot of this is, giving I would like to give people permission. It's like you can do this for yourself, right? Like so there is no like there's nobody that comes around and like waves their wand and is like, poof, Amy, you are a stepmom. I could have called myself anything, just kind of like grandparents do. Like some grandparents don't want to be called grandparents, so they're like, call me Nana or call me, whatever the name is. And so, if it bugs you, the word, right, it is up to you.
yeah, that's an important distinction too because if you don't feel comfortable yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny, and I'll go back to my original thought in a second, but, my mother-in-law calls me her daughter, um, and she expects me to call her mom, which I do, um, but it's brings up a lot of, like, funny things that happen when she introduces me to other people, and they're like, "Oh, it's so great to meet you, how are the twins?" And I'm like, "I don't have children,"
Right.
because her
No,
actual
exactly.
daughter has kids.
Right. And so that is, one of the things I work with a lot with stepmoms and stepdads and adults in blended families is your identity within the family, like, which it can be different. Like how you think of yourself and how others perceive you can be different. And that can be on purpose or it can cause a problem. Right. So, like, if it's super important to me that I am called mom, but they have a mom, that's confusion, right? That's confusion. And so So I call we've always just called each other by their names, and so stepmom is a term that we use to designate who's responsible for what.
Makes total sense. So, back to my original question after my little tangent and your very helpful insight into so you've clearly created a really happy, healthy, blended family in your home, and I can tell that from before we were recording, and you were talking about the excitement that you had for your stepson's wedding and surrounding, kind of like being part of that. So, regardless of anything else that I knew before, I could totally tell from the way that you were talking, and what are some tips that you have for our listeners who are trying to create that long-term happy, healthy home as a blended family?
All right. Well, so how long do we have? Just kidding. No, I
I
have,
know it's a big one.
that's a big one. I have tons of things. Like, so I do have, I have a list of 10 tips that I think are the lessons that I learned over 20 years of my marriage that I put together when I started building this coaching practice. And so we don't have time to go through all of those, but I think that there are some core things that are great, for doing these kind of things. The top one I always lead with, which I'll share with you, and then anybody who wants more can get them. I give them away like free M&Ms, right? So, but one of the top lessons that was really good for me in the longevity of this happy, healthy family is open and humble communication, right? And so, and that's this this is great for your listeners because this I think is key no matter what formation of family you're forming. Be willing to talk about anything. That's what I mean when I say open. And the humble is, you know, I'm not always right and I don't get to make all the decisions, right? Like, so when I go into a conversation and, for planning a wedding, it's like figure out what I want, but then also understand that other people are going to have their own wants and I'm not going to always know the answers. So that's one of the things. And then I have 9 others. The way they will shake out in each family is going to be different. Right. So it's going to be different. So I'll give you another one real quick, even though I said I wouldn't do this. One of them is honoring, honoring and respecting all the other people in the family. And in a blended family, we sometimes have some extra people, right? So like where, your future mother-in-law her opinions are going to show up in your wedding and no matter who you are, right? In a blended family, you might have, previous relationships, right? Now their opinions are not going to directly should probably shake out in what you do for your actual wedding, but they are there. They're a part of it. And so like ignoring them and pretending they're not there is not super helpful. So
Yeah, totally. For many, many reasons, especially parenting, because I would imagine, you have to honor that person and their parenting style, even if it's something
right.
that you don't particularly agree with. And I would imagine that comes up all the time.
Comes up all the time. A fun thing with, it comes up all the time, and everybody's going to do it differently, in every single family. But it does come up all the time, and yeah, it's there. It's there, and how you deal with it is where the choice is, which I think power comes from seeing the choice, and uh, and not, like, but if you can't, it doesn't ever magically go. It's like it doesn't go. It's like right now you're expecting a storm. If you ignored that there was a storm coming it doesn't make it not happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally true. As I sit here in a storm and I've lost internet twice while we've been on this podcast. And that's why I record on this platform because it doesn't drop the podcast itself. It like powers through it. Anyway, behind the
That's
scenes info.
magic technology.
I know, right? Right? Okay, so um what final advice do you have for our listeners who are planning a wedding as a blended family?
So this will be my advice. One of the like big things that I've just learned as an adult is that happiness is a totally worthwhile goal. Right. And so there are so many things that come together in a wedding, and it can feel very pressured and very, very important and all kind of things like that. And it is very easy to put everybody else's desires and wants and needs in front of yours, or flip it and put your needs in front of everybody else's, and nobody's happy, right? So thinking about what you will really enjoy and what will make you happy is I think really, really key and really, really important. And there is a balance to this in every single event that you'll pull together. And you deal with weddings, and there's a lot of emotions that go into this, but using that as a driving force is a pretty good, like, directional force for me. So, my wedding was unusual by some standards because my husband had been married before, but I loved it. It was absolutely like a wonderful day in our life, and we had all these like teeny tiny people running around, which other people may not have enjoyed, but we put it in a place where they could do that and be kids, and it didn't interfere with me being, the bride of the day and enjoying it. And that was intentional. It was like, what will make me happy? That's where we go. So that's my tip.
I love that. I Wait, that was a mic drop moment. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for joining me on the wedding dish today. Where can our listeners find you online and get those 10 tips and all the things?
So my name is Amy Stone, and the name of my business is Amy Says So, which is a play on that old thing that some parents would say, because I say so. So amysaysso.com is my website. That's where I funnel all of my resources and wisdom and tips, and you can find all the things about me and what I do.
Awesome. I love it. And do you have social media as well?
I do have social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, and I do a much better job of pushing out through the website than I do anything else. And someday in the future, when I have like an army of people who are there, you can definitely find me on Facebook and Instagram. And I try and make sure that everything doubles out there. But the best way to know what I'm about is to go to Amy Says So, and then, get one of my helpful resources. And then I do a better job of keeping in touch.
Got it. Yeah, you need to know where your strengths are. And I think that is perfectly done.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, while you are visiting amysaysso.com, you can also swing on over to theweddingdishpodcast.com and you can grab show notes. We have more details about Amy's actual wedding and all kinds of great tips and things. And we'll, of course, link out to Amy on our show notes and our episode description. So if you missed the website or forget what it is by now already, then you can just click through. And you can find us on social media at The Wedding Dish Podcast. And don't forget to tune in next week. I'll be dishing, with authors Edna and Jerry, the humans behind Real Deal Wedding Insiders. And if you like the show, give us a follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. It really helps us get discovered by more people and all the good stuff. Until we meet again, thanks for tuning into The Wedding Dish. Bye, everybody.